the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Before we get started into announcements and communications, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Faley to introduce our student representative for the year.
Gianni, would you please stand? This is Gianni Clark. She's our 2020-21 student board representative, and I believe you're here with your mother this evening, correct?
Yes.
Welcome. As soon as school gets started, we'll have you sitting up here next to me. You can keep me company. Thank you for being here and for investing your time and representing the student body.
We're smiling at you.
Smiling back.
My understanding is she's already participating in some meetings that have been going on.
Welcome. Thank you. Ms. Moravich? No, Mrs. Carroll's reading them all.
Correct.
The board secretary is going to read those.
After,
We're just going to do it all now, right? Correct?
it'll be after the communication, after our presentation, she'll read those. All right, I'll turn it over to Dr. Stout and Dr. Trickett for the presentation on updating us on the reopening.
Dr. Stout?
I believe Dr. Chris is actually going to start.
Yes, I'm sharing my screen with everyone now. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Fadley and Dr. Stout. We will be teaming up this evening to present three different pieces of our Return to Learn plan for our students and our staff in preparation for the start of school, which is just a few short weeks away. So the first piece for me is a focus on really the three different choices that we provided our families with regards to the different learning options or learning modalities that they would have to choose from in order to start the school year. And what we really wanted to be able to do, the guiding belief that we approached this work through, was to provide that same level of high quality, engaging, and relevant learning experiences that every Wilson family member and parent expects from the Wilson School District, regardless of the delivery preferences or even any state or federal mandated changes that come our way. So although this information has been communicated, we wanted to make sure that we shared publicly that this has been our guiding focus the entire time we worked through the recommendations that we presented to the board and to our community. And as a recap, there are three choices, and the choices that we have, we're confident in that they can provide a quality experience for all different types of families, regardless of their need. We are moving forward with our fully in-person option for K-6. We're moving forward with a fully in-person model in a hybrid format for our secondary students grades 7 to 12. And then we have our remote program and our virtual program. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time this evening discussing and reviewing the differences between remote and virtual. So again, the in-person, just as a reminder, these students will be coming back to school all the way through our school system for some form of in-person instruction, as we believe that this is the best way to educate our students, not only academically, but also the social emotional health, components of raising a child and raising a student in our school district. So we're focusing heavily on reduced class sizes in our K-6 environments. We're looking at cohorting students together to ensure that we can keep kids with the same group of students throughout the school day, as opposed to more of a personalized schedule that allows students to move in and out of classes. We're looking at staggered start times. For our elementary kiddos, it'll be a physical staggering of the time to start the school year. And we're also looking at modified schedules with regards to their specials. In our secondary space, we have a different set of challenges, mostly because we chose to go with a hybrid mode. So what we'll be doing here in the secondary, we'll be dividing our students by their alpha, by their last names, A to K, and then L to Z. And on any given day of the school week, we will have half of our students in school and half of our students learning remotely from home. Due to the personalization that goes into their schedules, this was one of the determining factors. We really felt strongly that if we weren't able to cohort kids together, if we weren't able to keep kids with their peers throughout the entire day, that we had to really get creative with regards to how we were going to adequately socially distance the students throughout the high school building and 7th and 8th grade. The last piece of this is a new piece for the board to consider tonight. You'll see a board agenda item. What we are proposing, what we are asking for is a modified start and end time of our secondary schools. And this would affect students in grades K to 6. So again, inclusive of grade K of 6. And what we're looking at doing is shifting the start of the day for students from 7:33 till 8 a.m. We are also recommending a shift of the end of the day to go from 2:40 p.m. to 2:30. And the primary reason that we're recommending this is to create a safer environment for our students. We know when we bring our kids into our school building that they have to go to a space where they're safe and supervised. Our current protocols that we have in place do not allow us to do this. We have systems in our schools where students go into large areas like cafeterias, gymnasiums, where they congregate. So shifting the day, opening the door now at 7:30 with the start of the school day at 8, allows us to send students directly to their homeroom teacher or directly to their first period teacher. And then the shift at the end of the day allows us to stagger the release of students. Again, we will be dismissing upwards of 1,000 kids from the high school at any given time. If we can stagger the walkers from the bus riders and then have our professional staff on site to help supervise both before and after school, we feel that the recommendation will allow us to do all the different things that we're asking our principals to do in a very safe way. So again, you'll see that as a board agenda item coming up shortly. One of the biggest talking points, one of the biggest changes that we implemented last week was a shift from a virtual option for our families to a remote learning option. And this really came from a ton of feedback from our families, feedback from our teachers, feedback directly from our students, where we heard very loudly that they wanted to have our teachers teaching our curriculum at the same pace of their peers. So last week with a video communication that we released to our families, we worked very hard with our teachers, our union, our leaders, and we feel confident that we can develop a program with our staff that is a mix of the live synchronous sessions as well as the pre-recorded asynchronous sessions that will meet the needs of every student in our school. In a few moments, you're going to see the different numbers of where we are with regard to our questionnaire and our commitment data. And this option is an option that's very enticing for a lot of our families. And we're very proud that we're able to do this and provide this to the families in the Wilson School District. Again, I want to remind everyone and reiterate that this will not look like the remote learning that we implemented in March, April, and May. This will be very rigorous. It'll match the pacing exactly to the pacing of our in-classroom students. And students that are at home will be expected to work during the school day, pretty much during the exact hours that the school day runs. So this is a pretty standardized and streamlined program that mirrors the in-person learning. There will be some situations in this mode of teaching and learning where students may need to supplement their schedules with some virtual options. Some of our students take courses that are only taught one period in the day and only enrolled with 24 students out of an entire high school of 2,100 students. So in some situations, we may not be able to meet every single scheduling need remotely. And in those cases, we'll be working directly with the parents and the students to make sure that we can provide some strong virtual options for those kids. The last piece is our third option in this program, and it is our Wilson Virtual Academy. Our Wilson Virtual Academy has been running in the school district for 10 years, and the way that this program works is that we use a third-party provider. Edgenuity is the most common one that we use, and we enroll students in a program that's taught by certified non-Wilson educators. This program is enticing for some of our families because it truly is flexible. It doesn't require students to log in necessarily at given times throughout the day, but it still holds them to a standard of rigor. The average class, just for the board and for the public's knowledge here, the expectation, the workload in a secondary student is 60 minutes per class per day. So this is not an easy option. This is a very challenging option, but it's an option that we feel will meet the needs of some of the students that we serve in the Wilson School District.
Dr. Stout presenting now? Is Dr. Stout going to present?
He's going to continue.
Yes, okay, sir.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cricket. I'm just going to spend a moment going through some of the current data based on our questionnaire to all of our families and the responses that we received so far. As you can see by this first chart, the total number of responses that we received up to this point, and this is as of 2:30 this afternoon, was close to or just about over 5,500 responses. Of those responses to date, about 3,800 families have selected for their individual students to return to in-person learning in some form for around 70% return. I do want to note that some of that data we are continuing to scrub. Some families filled out the questionnaire more than once. There are maybe some duplicates, so we're working to eliminate some of that data. And based on that response number, with our kindergarten response number, we're looking at about 300, 350 families that we have not heard from yet. So we're continuing to work to verify the data in that response and also reach out and contact those families that we have not heard from yet in order to solidify their answers. You can see on this chart and on the next slide, which is more of a graph, the breakdown between the buildings. The top line there of the graph is our total for 70% return to learn in person response. And then each of the buildings are broken out. You can see that the light blue line there at 80% is our high school. Our two lower numbers are two of our elementaries, Whitfield and Spring Ridge, with a 56% return to in-person learning rate. So again, we're still missing about 300 to 400 responses, we think. We're continuing to calculate that and scrub that data. We feel that even if we were to assume that all of those missing students were returning in person, it wouldn't affect, spread over the entire district, it wouldn't affect the total percentages per building all that much. So these are kind of the best ballpark figures that we have to date. The next slide is just a specific breakdown of our kindergartners and the responses we've received so far. Again, the top line is the total at about an 81% response for kindergartners coming into the building for our half-day program. And then again, each of the buildings is broken out there individually by percentage of students planning to return in person. We did have a few students that selected the remote option for kindergarten. So we'll be working through that selection or that option as well for them. The final slide that I have here is just a breakdown of our bus transportation ridership. So the first two columns look at the total number of responses in grades 1 through 12, indicating that they did plan to participate in our daily transportation to and from school for about 1,525 total riders. And then you can see the breakdown in percentage by building for students expecting to ride the bus in grades 1 through 12. To give you a ballpark figure, we typically transport around 3,500 students in a regular school year on our buses. And again, the last two columns there to show you the kindergarten breakdown, the number of kindergartners who indicated they would be riding the bus per building, and then a percentage of the total kindergartners that indicated they would be riding our transportation. Keeping in mind also, obviously, Cornwall Terrace and Whitfield are buildings that are heavily walking buildings. So even if you took those two percentages out and averaged the other three elementary buildings, that would come out to around 42% riders, which is right in line with the percentage of responses from our other grade levels. So that's just a quick breakdown of our current data from the questionnaire. Again, that information we are continuing to verify, continuing to get some additional answers from folks that we haven't heard from yet. But that information is extremely important as we continue to move towards the first day of school and reopening.
Thanks, Dr. Hopper. So I have been asked to present a little bit of a kindergarten update. Just for some background information I wanted to expand upon. Last time we met, there was a good bit of feedback from our community as well as from our board with concern over class size, especially in our earliest grades with our earliest learners. And so not only class size was a concern, but as we sought to implement the process of bringing students back into the building, we began to talk about what that means for our newest learners in the kindergarten program. At that point, the idea of a half-day program was put on the table. We knew that we needed to act quickly, but also needed to vet a decision that would be this large. So we went to leadership, district leadership, building level leadership. We went next to our leadership from our curriculum committee and our board leadership. We then went to kindergarten teachers and even our union leadership. And each of them was in support of our core beliefs, which really talk about educating the whole child and thinking about what is emotionally and developmentally appropriate for our learners. And that's how this half-day kindergarten idea came into fruition. So we knew we needed to tell our families quickly because the one challenge that did exist, tremendous amount of benefit, but the one challenge we were aware of was the need for childcare for the second part of the day. And we wanted our families to have the optimal time frame that they could have to plan for this childcare option for their families. So as we continued forward, thinking about programming that would be appropriate for our kindergartners, we knew we wanted to maintain the academic program that kindergarten currently offers, and we could do it in a way that included playful learning, that included opportunities for fun and for movement, but it would also have to exclude the pieces that make up a large part of our kindergarten, which are social aspects. We knew that we could not maintain the guidelines that we've been given and include the amount of recess, free play, free choice kind of opportunity. So what I wanted to show you tonight is, although those types of things, such as free play and recess, needed to be eliminated, there are also some really good things about our half-day program that can be done in a playful learning environment and be inclusive of movement. So we're talking about what is included in that academic program. The must-haves for reading, you can see there. Students will not miss out on some fun opportunities to express themselves with phonics. If you've ever visited a kindergarten classroom, you've seen them doing jumping jacks and spelling their sight words as they're doing them. That can all still happen. Read alouds, our mini lessons and independent reading times will be retained. So we believe in a very robust literacy program. We're going to integrate our science and social studies through literacy. Inclusive of our literacy component of writing, we're going to go back and look at phonics once again and emphasize some fun opportunities in phonics, writing, the intro to writing through name play, learning to write their names, learning to write other students' names. We'll also be integrating writing in science and social studies. And then in numeracy, the area of mathematics, we'll be focusing for this first trimester on number sense and games to provide, again, a fun and playful environment while learning at the same time. So I've provided here also on this slide for you what a sample schedule could look like. Now keep in mind, this is just a sample. This is not something that we have firmed up. We're going to be looking at this with our teachers and making sure that we tweak things and make it fit for our children. But you'll see our coach, early childhood coach, Madeline Bohr, in this video explaining our programming. If you could enlarge it, Dr. Prickett, that'd be great. I see that we don't have volume. And there is volume to the video, so I'm not sure what's happening here. Yeah.
And integrate them into our core subjects.
There you go.
Another thing that we're going to be working on year is using our technology resources and our tools. Hi, my name is Madeline Bohr, and I'm the early childhood coach here at Wilson. Today, I'm excited to share with you what we've been working on as a team and ideas for our half-day kindergarten schedule. We know that it's different, it's not as long of a day, but we're really confident that it's developmentally appropriate and it's going to be fun for students. What we've done is integrated a lot into our core areas, and so I'm going to show you a sample schedule now of just what can fit in this half-day. So students would still be getting their core areas. They'd be getting reading, writing, and math, but what we would do is take our science and social studies and play and integrate them into our core subjects. Another thing that we're going to be working on in the year is using our technology resources and our tools so that students know how to use their Chromebooks and they can do this in school and then transfer that at home. We'll have language arts, math, special, and different times for hand washing. Here is just a sample schedule of what a day could look like in kindergarten. They would come in the morning or in the afternoon and maybe do some independent work at their seats. This could be Play-Doh, it could be stamps, it could be puzzles, drawing. Then they could have a class meeting and calendar. This would allow our students to have a classroom community time and ideas for their classroom to talk and to communicate with their friends. The calendar time is a great time to include a lot of math. They would also have a 20-minute special. Their math time in the beginning of the year would look a lot like number set and games. These could be really fun to then transfer at home and share with families. There's hand washing time again, and then you can see a larger chunk of language arts time. This could include reading and phonics. In the beginning of the year, we want students to love reading. We want to put storybooks in their hands and to show them that they are readers. Some fun things that we could be doing during this time is creating puppets to match their storybooks, independent reading, and a lot of read-alouds. We could also do shared reading, mini lessons, and integrate science and social studies within this time. There's a hand washing and small group time. This small group time could look like independent work, one-on-one work with the teacher, or a small group. The teacher could differentiate during this time and help depending on what the kiddos need. There's another language arts time that could be for writing and phonics. We want students to love writing. We want to do creative writing, interactive writing in the beginning of the year. And we could also work on letter integration within this, name writing, name study of not just their names, but their peers. And then there's a hand washing and there's a pack-up time. That's just a sample schedule that we've been working on as a team. But we're really excited because we know that this will benefit our students, and we're going to continue to work as a team to make this the best for our kindergarten kiddos.
And so, as Madeline said, we're working on ways to make this a classic kindergarten experience that is playful, that offers opportunities to get fingers in Play-Doh and do some of the things that are really meaningful for children in kindergarten. Puppets and read-alouds, all those things will be included. We are having it compressed into a half-day opportunity, that's true. But again, we believe that given the pandemic environment that we're in right now, this will be the best developmental approach for our kindergarten students. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mrs. Carroll, communications this evening?
Yes, our first comment comes from April Maurer. Children do need to return to public school for their mental health and learning. My daughter has social skills, so in a classroom setting would be best for her all around. But I'm scared of this horrible death and sickness rate. So how safe are we to go back to school setting is my question. My daughter did very well on e-learning, but she is IEP and needs routine. That's very hard as a parent with this pandemic that all of us are going through. I worry the only safe place is home and practice masks, gloves, hand washing, bleach, and Lysol, and some days that may not be enough. I'm very concerned about our children's well-being. The next comment is from Jana Jans. I feel that our children shouldn't be exposed to this sort of risk by going to school. Delise Otero says, number 1, 22 students in a classroom is too many students with or without a pandemic. The picture presented during the last board meeting where the 6 feet was measured from the center of one desk to another did not take the children into account. It is inevitable that students will move. The slightest movement would result in them not being 6 feet apart. In my opinion, 15 students max per classroom would be considered limiting class size to allow for proper social distancing. Number 2, the new online option where the student follows the school schedule does not work for working families. I would like virtual learning with Wilson teachers that will provide flexibility so we can sit with our children after work to help with their schoolwork. Would the school consider recording the day's lessons so this could be an option? Number 3, the third-party provider chosen by the school district, Edgenuity, has terrible reviews online, 1 star with over 900 reviews. Based on the reviews and comments, it doesn't seem this provider is reflective of the high standards we hold the district and our students to. Is there another provider the district is currently considering? If we choose another online option, will our students be unenrolled from the district, making it more difficult to transition back once things are safer to return to school? And from Tara Cup, I want to thank the district for their ongoing communication regarding school reopening. I am curious if there will be changes regarding the K-6 plan of returning to school. Will there be a switch to hybrid? If the district decides to switch to virtual for K-12 like Exeter and Antietam are doing, when will families be made aware of this switch? Thank you. Megan Wolfinger. Number 1, childcare options. When the decision was made for kindergarten to be half-day, an option for childcare should have been offered. For example, the Exeter superintendent was prepared to support through BCIU those families in need of childcare. There are many parents who are still looking for childcare for when their kindergartner is not at school. We would appreciate an option given that the late notice does not allow for reservations of alternate childcare. Number 2, by making the decision for half-day over full-day kindergarten, though Wilson believes that half-day kindergarten is in the best interest of the students with reduced class sizes to prevent the spread of germs, by doing so, the children are exposed to more germs when being cared for by daycare, nanny, relatives, or neighbors. Then those students come back into the school and put the other kids and their teachers at more risk than simply being with their cohorts all day. From Stephanie, wouldn't it make much more sense to have the students go for 2 consecutive days to lessen the exposure of students when someone does get the virus? Example, Group A go Monday and Tuesday, deep cleaning building on Wednesday, and Group B go Thursday and Friday. And Lisa Brown, please explain the reasoning behind 6th grade going full-time and not hybrid like the rest of the middle school grades. Why are they being bunched with K-5 if they are in a completely different building? Will they be in one classroom all day, or will they switch classes?
Thank you. Dr. Faley, will your team be able to put those questions on the list that you have for other people and answer those out?
What we will do is we will take the questions that we received and we will add them to the FAQs that are on the district website.
Thank you. Tonight we met in executive session to discuss personnel issues. Looking to request approval of minutes of the school board meeting held on July 20th, 2020, as attached. Looking for a motion. Mr. Martin first. Mr. Schneider second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Payment of bills, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit tonight payment of bills in the amount of $1,196,514.16.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Mr. Schneider, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 8 for, 0 against.
Dr. Faley, it's time for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Listed on the superintendent's report this evening are 2 retirements. I'd like to publicly recognize Marjorie Kettner, special education instructional assistant at the high school. She is retiring with 25 years of service to the Wilson School District. And Marcia Norton, hourly teacher at Shiloh Hills, retiring with 33 years of service with the Wilson School District. I'd like to wish these individuals the best in their future endeavors. With that, I'd like to submit my personnel and program recommendations for board consideration.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Mr. Case, do we have a second?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper? Yes. Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8 for, 0 against.
5.1, accept with gratitude the following donation from Ken Meyerhofer to the Operations Department, a check for $20 to be used toward maintenance. Do we have a motion? Mr. Snyder first, do we have a second? Mr. Martin second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Under Human Resources. 6.1, request to approve the MOU between the Wilson School District and WEA for unpaid leave for the 2020-21 school year as attached. 6.2, request to approve Gerald New, JROTC, Senior Army Instructor, salary and effective date to be determined, replacing Edward Walter, who resigned. 6.3, I'm sorry. Looking for a motion to approve 6.1 and 6.2 as presented. Mr. Snyder
Cocker.
first, Mrs. Cocker second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper? Yes. Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8 for, 0 against.
7.1, request approval of a service agreement with Dr. Margaret Key to perform an independent evaluation at a fee not to exceed $4,500 in accordance with Board Policy 113.3. 7.2, request approval of the revised memorandum of understanding of the position of school nursing manager as attached. 7.3, request approval of PDE's emergency instructional title time template, section 520.1, outlining the proposal, instruction of schedule under the in-person, hybrid, remote, and virtual models for 2020-21 school year as attached. Looking for a motion to approve items 7.1 through 7.3. Mrs. Casper first. You have a second? Mr. Martin, second. Any discussion? Okay.
Chooses her, or is that the parents?
This
that-
is an independent evaluation to be performed by Dr. Kay for a student who has special needs.
Did we choose the doctor, or who chooses the doctor?
Typically the way that works is the school district will agree for certain individuals, the parent and the school district work together to identify an acceptable person to perform the independent evaluation.
Okay, and that takes...
So we did have input on that, yes.
Okay, and that takes a couple of, I would imagine, a few hours, maybe a half a day tops. I mean, that seems a bit steep, $4,500 for...
This is the going rate.
That's the going rate?
For independent evaluations.
Okay, and have we talked about it all or filed any kind of due process hearing to to counter that instead of?
Typically, what we do in terms of an independent evaluation is the district will work to agree with the parent on that as a first step, and then bring that information back to the multidisciplinary team, the IEP team, for consideration if there are differences between a district evaluation and an outside evaluation. The IEP team will make that decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
We have a
you.
first and, thank you. We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
No.
Mrs. Casper?
Yeah.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder? Mr. Hart?
Yes.
7-4, 1 against.
8.1, request approval to award the bid pending solicitor approval to Heinerschen Electric Incorporated for Whitfield Elementary School's modular classroom for the electrical work, and total amount of $69,065. We have a motion.
So moved, Case?
Mr. Case first. Do we have a second? Mr. Negrini? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper? Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder? Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8-4, 0 against.
9.1, request approval of the PCCP sub-grant award for COVID-19 Safety and Security Grant 2020-CS0133817 in the amount of $350,938, covering period from March 1st, 2020 through October 30th, 2020. Do we have a motion? Mr. Martin first. Do we have a second? Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case? Mrs. Casper? Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder? Mr. Hart? 4, 0 against.
10.1, request approval of the consulting contract between the district and Institute for Teaching and Learning to help support the planning and reopening of school for $14,850 as attached. 10.2, request approval of the purchase of replacement curriculum for middle school EL learners. Materials can no longer be purchased from the prior vendor. Materials will be purchased with Title III funds. 10.3, request approval of a new course resource at the high school as attached. 10.4, request approval of stipends to be paid from Title III grants to Linda Vitalo and Kathy Krajewski, $500 each, to mentor new teachers Ryan Blue and Kim Shikram. 10.5, request approval for a change to the secondary start and end times from 7:30 a.m. to 8 o'clock a.m., and then from 2:40 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. These shifts will allow for safe transitions in and out of our school buildings and will enhance the transportation for all students, else all the schools K to 12. Looking for a motion to approve items 10.1 through 10.5. Mr. Schneider first. Mrs. Casper second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I reviewed the proposal for the new courses, and I really don't understand what it's trying to accomplish, so I need a better understanding of what this is supposed to accomplish.
Can Mr. Trickett answer that? Dr. Trickett.
Mr. Trickett or Dr. Stout, or Dr. Hoffert, do you have, I do know this has been presented by special ed. Do you have any response to Mr. Martin's question?
I can talk to the new course if you want me to.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Actually, I read the new course and I thought it was phenomenal. I asked Mr. Trickett if it could be opened up to all ninth grade incoming students. It's a course that's going to teach a lot of things that they missed at the middle school and elementary level, time management, how to go about studying, and lots of different life skills that the kids may or may not have. I know I have a ninth grader who would greatly benefit from the course as written, and I was very, very impressed. with the ideas presented in that course. And I know there's a lot of other parents who read that course syllabus and say, "Why? I wish my student was able to do that." It's only a half credit, so it's not like they're getting a 3-credit course for this, but it's a half a credit, and these are all really important skills for our at-risk and our neediest students who really need these skills.
Ninth grade?
Yeah, I do. But guess what? I have a kid at home who doesn't do any of this. So clearly there's a need for the course. And there's kids that have IEPs who this is going to be difficult for them for the rest of their life. And they need this every single year of their life. So certainly not a wasteful.
I'm sorry, Amy, my internet connection here is not great, but to Mr. Martin's point, and just for the whole board's awareness, this is a course that we've had in the high school schedule for years. So this is what we're proposing this evening is to award credit for these kiddos that are in the class, learning these skills, working through the curriculum and being provided the supports that they need. It's really just to give them credit, for the work that they're already doing.
And I would also note that this course is designed to meet the specific IEP goals of the students that are enrolled in it.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper? Yes. Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini? Mr. Schneider? Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8-4, 0 against.
11.1, request approval of the updated Wilson School District Berkshire Heights Early Learning Center Child Care Phase School Reopening Health and Safety Plan as attached. Looking for a motion?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker first. Do we have a second? Mr. Case second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case? Yes. Mrs. Casper? Yes. Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Schneider? Yes. Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8-4, 0 against.
12.1, request approval of the updated 2020 fall health rates as attached. 12.2, request approval of the updated 2020-21 winter health rates as attached. 12.3, request approval of the updated 2021 spring health rates as attached. 12.4, request approval of the updated 2020-21 refreshment health rates as attached. 12.5, request approval of the updated 2020-21 admission rates as attached. Looking for a motion to approve 12.1 through 12.5 as presented.
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker first. Do we have a second? Mr. Negrini? Thank you. Sorry. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper? Yes. Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Schneider? Yes. Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8-4, 0 against.
13.1, we just have a first reading of the policies listed. 14.1, request approval of the updated 2020-21 school year calendar to include secondary semesters as attached. Do you have a motion? Mr. Martin first. Do we have a second? Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper? Yes. Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider? Yes. Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8 against.
Committee reports. 15.1, Berks Career and Technology Center. Mrs. Casper.
There are no reports for BCTC. Our next meeting is this Wednesday.
Thank you. 15.2, Wilson Equity Task Force. Mrs. Casper and Dr. Kennedy.
Go. Our last meeting was on July 28th in the LGI room of the high school. However, since this is our first public report, I wanted to reassure the public that we have been meeting monthly since January, and more recently, every 2 weeks we've been meeting. So I'll recap a few of the things that we've been doing in a moment, but I did want to reference and begin with the task force's endorsement of the Berks County Anti-Racism and Equity Statement that was signed by all Berks County superintendents and the BCTC and the BCIU last month. I want to make sure that everyone on the board and in our community can see the goals of the document and know that its goals are driving the task force's work around anti-racist education and combating systemic racism in our school climate. As for some of the work that we've been doing on the task force, we've been really busy, and I really appreciate how the administration has mobilized some faculty and other student voices to come to the task force as well. Right now, we are organizing and hoping to do a student focus group / discussion to hear from student experiences around race in the district. We hope to start with a group representing the high school and perhaps later recent alumni sometime in August before the school year begins. We have reached out to faculty who has already been integrating anti-racist education, specifically a core group of English faculty in the high school. They're also planning a professional development for interested faculty on August 12th from 8 to 11 a.m. called The Elephant in the Room: How to Begin to Discuss Race and Culture with Students. We hope to put out a survey for faculty to learn who might be interested in facilitating these types of discussion with their students in their classrooms. At our last meeting, we also brainstormed some potential questions to ask or prompt in the focus group and discussions that we hope to have. The task force has certainly expanded to include student and teacher voices, which has greatly benefited in carrying out the goals of the task force in general. We are a task force that's filled with teachers and learners around issues of social justice and equity. So we hope to continue to examine a variety of literature together during parts of our meetings to aid in informing the work that we do together. As for our book discussion, we hope that this will continue as an arm of the task force and perhaps even get picked up by the district as a district-wide or a community book discussion. So we are busy. We are super grateful for those who have been supporting our work from the district and from the community at large, and have been coming to the meetings. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. 15.3, oh, go ahead.
If I may, first of all, I want to applaud Mrs. Casper and Dr. Kennedy in their efforts to head up this task force. I had the pleasure of having lunch with Mrs. Casper a few weeks ago as we kind of discussed, this initiative and to get some different perspectives on things. I think all decent human beings can agree that racism has no place in a civilized world, and we all as individuals have to do our part to make sure that we're eliminating racism. With that backdrop, I do have a number of questions relative to the Berks County Anti-Racism and Equity Statement that has been signed by all of the superintendents, as well as Dr. Hackman at the BCIU. And it speaks about a commitment to maintaining a safe and inclusive learning environment, and I'm sure as the Equity Task Force is gathering information, I'd be curious to see whether or not there are examples that Wilson has promoted or perpetuated in any way unsafe or uninclusive learning or working environment here, either recently or in the near past. It also speaks in the statement the need for providing equal opportunities to students. And I'm curious to see whether or not, as part of the task force work, whether or not there are examples that Wilson in any way has failed to provide equal opportunity to any student here as a result of race, ethnicity, or gender. You spoke to systemic racism. I'd be curious, as part of the task force work, identifying instances within the Wilson School District. Obviously, the world at large is certainly a different perspective. I think the task force is focused in part on Wilson doing its part to eliminate systemic racism, and I'd be curious as to what instances within the district those may be identified. I also would like to understand the definition of equity as the district understands it, and perhaps as this joint statement had been written. There is obviously a tremendous difference between equal opportunity and equal outcomes. I would like to know whether or not the equity that is discussed in this particular statement is looking toward equal outcome for students. The example that is provided oftentimes in the literature that I've read, and it's a very clear example. It's a picture of three children standing outside of a fence, trying to look into a ball game that's taking place, and one of the children is 12 inches taller than the shortest child, and there's a child somewhere in the middle. And even though they have an equal opportunity to look at the game through the fence, the tallest one has the best vantage point and can see the entire game, and obviously the shortest child sees very little. And so despite the fact that there's equal opportunity, the outcome is different for them. And so the picture that they put as far as the example of equity is demonstrating that each of the shorter children are given a box or a stool to stand on, and then ultimately they have the same vantage point at the end. And that is the example that is used to establish the equity that is being described in that particular article. That obviously speaks to an equal outcome for those individuals and what it takes in order for those individuals to have an equal outcome. But those are measurables that are very easily identified, that being height. And we know within a district there are different measurables that can be identified. There are children that are hearing impaired, that are blind, that have some significant learning disabilities, English as a second language, and we're able to clearly identify what those measurables are. I'm curious as to whether or not the district will be coming up with a list of what those measurables are when it comes to trying to establish services to create equity for those students. And then certainly with that extra services, what might that cost the district in terms of providing those additional services? Moving throughout some of the statement, it refers to the inequities that education leaders are obligated to have conversations about. I'd be looking for examples through the task force to what some of those specifics of inequities that we are obligated to talk about, to have conversations about, and whether or not we are providing a singular explanation for those inequities, or whether there will be further discussions on the various different factors that may lead to inequities in different areas. And if we're going to be having those conversations, at what age will we be beginning those conversations? At the elementary level, at the middle school level, or are we only starting at the high school level? These are, I think, important questions that should be addressed as part of your task force. And then as you get down to almost the end of the statement, there are, I believe, 6 numbered statements. Number 1, I'd be looking for examples at Wilson where our actions, decisions, and outcomes were the result of racism or perpetuated racism within the district, and how we can certainly address those moving forward. Paragraph number 5, in an effort to promote a diverse workforce and hiring candidates from a diverse workforce, are we establishing some type of quota system in order to justify the means of having a more diverse workforce? You know, discussions about race is certainly an uncomfortable one. We continue to hear how we all need to be uncomfortable when it comes to discussing race. The only way we can have open and honest and thoughtful discussions about race is for all of us to feel uncomfortable in those discussions. But we need to make sure that we can all ask questions, that we can all feel comfortable in sharing our opinions, that there's the free flow of information. That dialogue seems to be lacking, I think, on a larger scale, where we can certainly, as part of this district and this committee, can have open and honest dialogue with differing ideas. You know, our role as educators is to prepare our students to think critically, to write clearly, and to speak intelligently. And in doing so, we must be mindful that we are not, as adults, imposing our view or our opinions of the world, as opposed to providing our children with the opportunity to make those decisions, come to those conclusions, and see the world for themselves. And I hope that Wilson is committed to sharing those values and allowing for the free exchange of ideas with our students. You know, and I would just kind of end things with that particular note with you know, a quote that I found interesting recently from Dr. Thomas Sowell, an economist and a chair at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. Is an economist that's written a number of very interesting books on economics and race, and he shares his concerns about education and how we educate our younger generation. And he talks about that the problem with education isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what it is to think. He confuses thinking with feelings. And we need to make sure that there are going to be times where, you know, as we continue to discuss things, that feelings sometimes are going to be challenged or hurt, but that is an important part of the thinking process and the learning process. So, you know, I look forward to hearing some more of the information that your committee is working on, and I appreciate your time, and you know, thank you.
Mr. Negrini, I'm so glad to hear that you're so very interested in the Equity Committee, because one of my goals of the Equity Committee was for our entire board to take part in equity and diversity learning together. And I look forward to when that is going to be scheduled for all of our board members. And the other thing I just want to quickly state is Dr. Trickett came up to Kutztown with me about 2 years ago. He visited my classroom, and we also went to a presentation on by one of our professors on minorities in education. And one of the and Dr. Trickett, you can correct my number, but I think it was like 365 Black and brown teacher candidates were enrolled in the entire state of Pennsylvania. So out of the thousands and thousands of teacher candidates, you know, those undergraduates studying to be teachers, only 365 across the entire Commonwealth were Black or brown. And so, I'm slightly offended by the word quota, but I will tell you, there are so few right now, no one would ever hit the quota. So some of the things that we talk about is how can we encourage our Black and brown students to enter the field of education? Because right now they're few and far between, and they're certainly not coming to the suburbs of Reading. They're going to, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and fun, exciting urban areas, and they're not coming out to here. And when we do get them, a lot of times they leave because they feel like they just don't quite fit in here. So we have a lot to talk about when we're talking about attracting high quality Black and brown teachers.
15.3.
With your permission, Mrs. Casper, if I could just make a few comments about what we just heard. Thank you. Mr. Negrini, I really appreciate your comments. I just wanted to address a few things. As we were planning this committee and our work, one of the very first things we wanted to do was ensure that we were listening to our students before we took any active steps to make any of any systemic changes or to go down any intervention path or anything like that. So that part of the reason that we designed this initially as a focus group and discussion with our current students was to get their perspective on their experience here at Wilson and to get some ideas about where our committee may need to look. Following that, when we're able to get that information from our students, we absolutely have the data sources available here within the district that we can look at our data. We can look at the information that we have about our programs. We can look at the outputs, as you talked about, to determine based on the information we gain from our students and combining that with the information that we get from our databases here in the district, we can look at where those areas of needs are and where we can do better as a district. So yeah, absolutely agree with everything that you said. But our primary focus starting out was identifying what our students see and what their perspective is as far as their experience here in the district.
That are already in some way instituting, whether it be curriculum or dialogue in this area, and I'm just curious if that has been discussed with curriculum committee or if that's just something that individually teachers are putting upon themselves to implement in their classes.
Yeah, I believe there are a few teachers who, doing some personal research, have started working in this area and are offering some professional development for other faculty members this summer that address some of these issues and how they might begin these discussions within their classes. But they're still working to adhere to the published curriculum just as any other teacher would. But they're just beginning to have these conversations and work some of these issues into the coursework and into their professional discussions.
Their perspective in terms of what they've been doing and the interest that they've been gaining, because it's not easy to teach or to include any kind of discussion around race in the classroom. So if we could build on what's already happening in the district, it would be one source to be able to expand if there are other faculty who are interested. So we wanted to kind of, just kind of probe and see where it was happening first. And so this group of faculty were already doing something like that.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, if I could just add, great work, and thank you. I just wanted to add a little caveat where, with regard to The Daily Show, I'm going to use a Daily Show example, very popular television show. They had this problem with quotas, and young, talented comedians that were minority, they weren't receiving any candidates for their internship program. And when you look at systemic racism, they were trying to figure out what the problem was, and it was quite simple. They were not paid internships. So a lot of minority folks need to work to, they don't have the pleasure of having free labor or working for free because they have to work. They can't do an internship program for free and still pay their bills. So what they wound up doing was they did paid internships, and the candidates came. So they tried quotas for the longest time, and that didn't work. So when they did the paid internships, it did work. So I would ask to challenge. I know we try and tout our internship program for seniors, and we're trying to cultivate that even more. I would challenge maybe Berks businesses to partner with us, and I don't even know if that's legal or not, to have some sort of possible paid internship program if there are students that are trying to do these things outside of the school day. So people do get paid, and because if you have success with internships, the rest of their career carries through that. So that's where they wound up finding and filling that systemic gap. So just something to consider as you move forward. Thanks.
Not every time that there's inequities or differences that it's one particular cause for that. I mean, Dr. Kennedy talked about the lack of diversity within graduates in the field of education. I know Dr. Fadley had pointed that out earlier in terms of just how many graduates recently within the Pennsylvania state system are people of color. But sometimes it's a difference in what people want to do in life, despite the fact of what they're capable of doing or what others might permit them to do. You can look at, for example, the number of women that are in the field of engineering. I mean, my daughter took the STEM program. There's been a big push to get, more women into that field. And despite the fact that it's overwhelming right now, the number of women that are earning degrees in the sciences, there's still a significant, difference in terms of men and women with PhDs in engineering. So it's not always a one-size-fit-all to say, hey, if this is happening, it must be the result of something bad. It's just further having those conversations to say, how do get people more excited, more interested, open doors for individuals.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you again for your work, and I look forward to bringing more of that out to the board and the community. Thank you. 15.3, Dr. Kennedy, Berks County IU.
The IU has not met yet. We're going to meet in person the third Thursday in August, hopefully in person. But we did meet as a curriculum committee Wednesday, July 29th. It was a great meeting, a long meeting as usual, but we talked about a lot of good things. We talked about, it was interesting. It was kind of half things that were COVID related and half things that were actually not COVID related. So one of the things we talked about was sixth grade is getting a new math program. We found that there's a need to bridge the math program from the elementary school to the math program that is more subject-based, algebra, geometry, trigonometry-based math. We needed a kind of a bridge between those, and the sixth grade teachers picked a new math program, and they are working hard to not only get accustomed to the teaching a hybrid model, but also teaching a new math program. We moved new teacher orientation a week earlier for our new teachers. Teachers are going to be doing a lot of training that the week of August 17th, training for hybrid models, training for elementary in case they do have to go online. And also the kindergarten teachers are going to be talking about how half-day kindergarten is going to be looking different. We did get an update on half-day kindergarten, and I want to again say how proud I am that we've moved to something that's developmentally appropriate for our students. Typically, obviously, full day, it has many more benefits in a normal year. But in a year when the students are going to be masked and 6 feet apart, I'm so glad. I felt the same way a lot of you all did, looking at that classroom filled with 22 desks pushed up against the wall. And I feel like we would have done so much more damage having those kids in there for 7.5 hours, 6 feet apart, masked, not able to play tag at recess, not able to really do the things that kindergartners should do. And I feel like we're doing the best we can for students right now. And we talked a lot about that at our curriculum committee and how we're still going to be able to hit all the academics and in a developmentally appropriate way, in a kinder way than making them sit in a desk for 7.5 hours. We talked about the things that we approved tonight, the new English language learner curriculum for the middle school, the new special education course, and we talked about some of the professional development that the teachers will do and have done over the summer. I think that's it, unless Mr. Schneider has something he'd like to add.
No, I think you did everything.
Great, thank you. Berks EIT, Mr. Schlossman.
Mike, thank you. We finally had the Berks Tax Collection Committee meeting for the first time this calendar year on July 30th. It was a virtual meeting, and the highlights of that meeting included the fact that her binding company presented the 2019 calendar year audit. It was a clean opinion, and one of the highlights was that the EIT Bureau distributed over $143 million in earned income tax to the tax jurisdictions that it serves, which is a $3.8 million increase over the prior year, or 2.7%. Year to date, June 2020, again, they're on a calendar year. Those financial statements were reviewed. Keep in mind that the distributions are delayed in when they collect it and when they distribute it. So through calendar year 2020, in June, the EIT distributions were down $1.5 million, or 2%, and that basically represents the fourth quarter of 2019 and the first quarter of 2020. So it really still is kind of pre-COVID numbers. The local services taxes and business privilege tax collections were also down year to date in June by 1.1 million, or 16% compared to the prior year. Partly some of the decrease was the fact that BPT tax returns were extended to July 15th. So some of the delay is because of the due dates of the returns. There was a presentation on the second half of calendar 2020, and the second quarter, which would be April through June for them, coming to us in August and September. They're estimating a 30% decrease and a 15% decrease for July through September. So the district did budget a 15% decrease overall for our fiscal year. So it seems to be in line with what EIT is projecting. So we'll see how that comes out. The new tax software development is moving right along. We will have available for employers to register on the new software beginning in November of 2020. And the employers can file their fourth quarter 2020 returns on the new site in January of 2021, which is great news. And our next meeting is October 29th. Thank you.
Thank you. Extracurricular? Mrs. Cocker?
Yes, we have not had an extracurricular committee meeting since our last board meeting. So our next meeting will be next Monday, August 10th at noon.
Thank you. Facilities, Mr. Negrini.
The pre-bids for the natatorium HVAC project is due tomorrow at 10 a.m. We will be discussing those bids at our next facilities meeting, which is scheduled for a week from today at the Operations Center at 4:30. Portable classrooms are in place. As we saw tonight, the electric work is going to start shortly, and the access ramp will be completed by the end of August. Mr. Simcox assures us that we are in good place with our COVID supplies of wipes, sanitizers, and other disinfectants. Operations is in the process of converting all water fountains to bottle fill stations and deleting all water fountains in elementary classrooms while keeping sinks and faucets. There's changes of the filters at twice the normal cycles in our HVA system as pre-health official guidance. We're also running the fans 24/7 to increase air changes in our buildings. Operations will be installing small tents at the access points to our buildings to ensure an isolation area outside of our buildings for any possible COVID cases. We'll be continuing to edge and mulch property and check and add sanitary mulch to playgrounds as needed to maintain the required fall protection. And every classroom will have a supply of masks, face shields, hand sanitizers, sanitizing wipes, and sanitizing antimicrobial spray for the start of school. So that's our report.
Great, thank you. Finance, Mr. Martin.
No report.
Human Resources, no report. Legislative, Mr. Martin.
We're still on summer break, so no report.
Okay. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Repeat an announcement. The WEF will be announcing some type of fall fundraising event. We are hoping to have an outdoor event that will follow all safety guidelines and protocols, and the WEF will recognize the sponsors for all events that were canceled in the spring, as well as the Sun Federal Teacher of the Year recipients, and present also the 2020 Legacy Award. And the WEF is thrilled to announce that this year the Education Foundation will be presenting the award to Dr. Rudy Ruth. Also, they're finalizing and announcing the meeting dates for all 2020 and 2021 school years soon, and also the first meeting of the year is going to be September 18th at 7:30. Details will follow. That's it.
Thank you. Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Just again, want to thank our community again, just for all of their support as we continue to refine our reopening plans. As obviously new information is becoming available on a regular basis. Obviously, there was a presentation at the beginning of the meeting which provided our community with yet again another update. Just want to be sure that we communicate to the community that we have a Q&A that is on our reopening website that we've developed, and that Q&A is something that's being updated pretty much daily as we're receiving your questions. We are posting responses on that Q&A, so please continue to review that on an ongoing basis. Again, it's posted on our district website. You can reach it through our homepage. In addition, we created a custom website for our remote learning, which we launched last week. Again, that has a comprehensive Q&A, which we are updating on a regular basis. So just another reminder again for everyone in our community to ensure that you are checking our district communication tools on a regular basis. The website, email, we've been sending out phone messages as well. And we'll continue to do that, obviously, as things are changing on a rapid basis, and we will continue to provide you with the most up-to-date information. So again, we just want to thank you for all of your support. Again, it's just great to be part of such an amazing community here at Wilson. Thanks.
Welcome. Thank you for all that you're doing to help move us in that direction. Technology, Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, we met today, actually. We discussed professional development for the teachers to help them better service the needs of the students, particularly the ones that are going to be using the remote learning. The elementary kids will each be distributed a Chromebook. Normally, they stay in the classroom in carts, but they'll have them to take to and from every day. They're working on getting cameras like the ones being used to help broadcast tonight, to help with remote learning, and getting some wireless to some of the outdoor areas at some of the schools. They have pavilions and stuff, and working on getting wireless to them so you can maybe get the kids outside and do some learning that way. Our next meeting is October 5th.
Great, thank you. Mr. Maravich?
No report.
We don't have any public participation, do we, Mr. Carroll, at the end? Okay. Looking for any discussion before we close? Looking for a motion to adjourn? Mr. Schneider first? Second? Mr. Casper?